Hello, boys and girls. Once again, this is Some of Us, episode 9. Again, like I said last week and the previous week, if you do not see a number in the title, I am trying something new because the algorithm is weird with YouTube again on what gets put out. Today, some of us love Mandalorian. This is the second to last episode of the season. We have heard speculation that Season 3 of The Mandalorian will be put out in December of 2021. I cannot wait, but there's also some amazing news. We saw the trailer of, the animated trailer of Bad Batch. We've seen speculation. We saw that Hayden Christensen would be coming back as Anakin playing Darth Vader in the Obi-Wan series, and maybe Ahsoka will get her own spin-off series as well. But today we're going to be talking about The Believer, Season 2, Episode 7 of The Mandalorian, second to last episode of the season. Some people are speculating that we'll see Ezra Bridger from Rogue One at maybe the end of this week's episode 8, because as you know, if you've watched Rebels, at the end of Rebels, the last thing you see is him with Grand Admiral Thrawn at the end. So let's talk about The Believer. What an amazing episode. Today I will be reading the recap of The Ringer. Let's go. And this week Grogu took an episode off. You know why. So for the first time in this series, the Mandalorian's breakout character received 0 screen time. And unlike the landmark 2 episodes that preceded it, Chapter 15 didn't reveal any pivotal plot points, relate any long-awaited origin stories, or introduce any iconic crossover characters. But even though The Believer was less sensational than The Jedi or The Tragedy, or, for that matter, than Disney's spotlight-stealing preview of multiple Mandalorian spin-offs and other upcoming Star Wars projects, the series still supplied a contemplative, touching, and explosive installment that functioned as mostly satisfying setup for next week's finale. Also, sorry again, this week's episode is going to be short again. It is finals week for me. I have, right after I'm recording this, I will be taking a final, and then tomorrow I'll be taking a final, and then Wednesday I'll be taking a final, and then Thursday I get to go home and see my parents, my brother. Too bad for freaking COVID, because I would love to see my grandparents. Alright, so on The Mandalorian, even the comparative calm before the storm makes a turbulent time. The Believer begins with the dirty third of a dozen: Din, Cara Dune, Boba Fett, and Fennec Shand. So they visit the Carthon chop fields to spring prisoner Miggs Mayfield, played by Bill Burr. We saw him in Chapter 6. We saw him in Episode 6 of Season 1. He was the ex-Imperial sharpshooter, and Mando kicked him into a New Republic prison cell. He was captured for assisting the death of a New Republic officer. And that New Republic officer is the guy who plays the voice of Anakin in the Clone Wars. So, that's the easy part. Cara, the newly appointed New Republic Marshal, immediately abuses her authority by bending some rules to take custody of Mayfield and walking him straight to Slave One. Ooh, baby, I love that ship. I mean, I miss the Razor Crest, but damn, the Slave One is beautiful. So, where he's dismayed to meet not only Fett, glowed up with the fresh coat of green paint and a patched up helmet and a trusty E3 rifle, but also his old frenemy Mando. Let me just tell you, Boba Fett's new paint job on his armor looks hella fresh. It's matte. It's a matte green. He's got like a yellow shoulder pauldron with the crate dragon skeleton. You can also clearly see, shoot, I forget the logo, the logo of the Mandalorian that helped Jango Fett. I don't remember his name, but it's like a circle with like, like arrows through it, or like a piece of wheat. It's super cool. So, Mayfield, this damn dog will not stop barking. Sorry if you guys hear that. So, Mayfield, kinda in dismay because he sees his old frenemy Mando, because Mando put him in the, locked him up in there. So, Din and Kara explain that they need Mayfield to get them Moff Gideon's coordinates. Like any self-respecting mercenary, Mayfield wonders what's in it for him. Kara says, "You get a better view." Unslightly as the TIE Fighters graveyards, where Mayfield is serving his sentence, may be a change of scenery doesn't seem like sufficient incentive to help accept a hazardous mission, unless perhaps Mayfield has his own reasons for opposing the Empire. More on that later. He agrees to go along, but in time-honored Mandalorian tradition, he hands our heroes a side quest. He can't acquire the coordinates unless he has access to an internal Imperial terminal. Too bad Mando and company blew up the base on Navarro. Fortunately, Mayfield knows a secret mining hub on Morak, where he can hack to his heart's content. So once they get on Morak, a verdant world making its first appearance in Star Wars, the crew concocts a plan to hijack an armored Imperial juggernaut. These juggernauts kind of have like a bend and twist to them. I mean, it's hard to explain. So they'll hack the armored Imperial juggernaut, impersonate its pilots, and slip into the base, where they can plunder the database for Gideon's whereabouts and head to the roof to await pickup. As always, there is a catch. Imperial remnant bases are set up by former members of the Imperial Security Bureau, whose scanners could identify fugitives Fennec and Kara as imposters. Fett is out too. He says, "Let's just say they'll recognize my face." And that's a callback because Boba Fett is a clone. They would obviously recognize his face because clones were everywhere. He says, referring to the features he shared with every Jango clone who once wore white armor. The only member of the quartet who can accompany Mayfield is Din, who hasn't shown his face to a soul since childhood, but to blend in at the base, he'll have to trade in his Beskar for drab Imperial armor. That means removing his helmet, which Mando doesn't want to do. For Grogu's sake, he gives in, although this step doesn't seem like such a sacrifice. Mayfield seems to think Mando may be breaking his vows, but a discreet helmet swap seems kosher even according to Din's sect's strict rules. It's true that in Chapter 3, the armorer asks, "Have you removed your helmet?" And Mando says no. In Chapter 4 and in Chapter 8, though, Mando makes it clear that the thing he can't do is take off his helmet in front of others, even when they're comely widows who want to make out. In private, he's free to flash some skin. After all, he has to eat and hopefully bathe from time to time, lest he smell like the stinky stormtrooper whose armor Mayfield borrows. Granted, removing one's helmet to swap suits of armor is slightly different from doing so because it's time to brush your teeth. Also, we get to see some of his chin because he drinks some of that bone broth in front of Grogu. So after commandeering the Juggernaut, Mayfield monologues while Mando mostly listens and laments the loss of a cockpit companion who doesn't speak. Feeling philosophical, Mayfield suggests that to Morak's inhabitants, the Empire and the New Republic are two sides of the same coin, invaders on their land. In Mayfield's mind, somewhere someone in this galaxy is ruling and others are being ruled. Who's doing the ruling doesn't make much difference. Knowing what we know, both siding the battle between the Empire and the Rebellion/Republic, is sort of a false equivalence. Only one combatant in this conflict is controlled by a Sith Lord who builds world-destroying superweapons, but Mayfield makes some sense from a certain point of view. For the casualties of war, that's much bigger than any one world. Dead is dead, whether the murder weapon was fired by the Old Republic, or the Separatists, or the New Republic, or the Empire, or for that matter, by the Mandalorians. So they did kind of do a cool thing when Mayfield was putting on the Imperial officer Juggernaut's stuff. He's like, man, this stinks, which is funny because it probably would stink. He says even his gloves are still sweaty. So Mayfield's Reverie/Vietnam allegory, not a new theme for Star Wars, is interrupted by another obstacle erected in the path of our protagonist, a pirate raid. Strangely, these pirates aren't trying to steal the Juggernaut or the volatile Rhydonium. So the Empire wants Rhydonium, which is like super explosive, and the Juggernaut can't go past a certain speed where it starts to jangle up the Rhydonium and it can explode. So when they're driving through Morak, they hear an explosion, the radio calls and says, you guys can keep going. So they drive past these like skeletons of the Juggernaut, because I guess, they either got raided by these pirates or they went too fast and the Rhydonium exploded. So that's what the Empire is mining on Morak. They just want to blow up some stormtroopers. Maybe they're trying to drive the remnant off the planet so they can pirate in peace. They succeed in destroying another transport, but a Beskar less Mando and Mayfield hold them off until two TIE fighters fly to the rescue, an expectation subverting inversion of the enemy X-Wing pilots from Chapter 10. Meanwhile, Mayfield limits his speed to avoid detonating the Rhydonium, reminding me of many video game missions in which the meter measures the damage to a vehicle's fragile cargo, and the requisite assortment of movie homages. This episode is kind of a Mad Max-ish, kind of. So in this case, the cavalry are the troopers and the pilots we're used to seeing as enemies. Never thought you'd be this happy to see stormtroopers, Mayfield says. Inside the base, before I go on. When Mando was doing hand-to-hand combat up there on top of the Juggernaut against these pirates, he kind of puts his arm up to block the hit. But I guess Mando forgot that he wasn't wearing Beskar. So the Juggernaut armor didn't help him. He also picks up a spear and tosses it and kills the pirate, which I guess maybe that's foreshadowing to his Beskar spear. Pretty freaking cool, huh? So, Mayfield says you never thought to be happy to see stormtroopers. The stormtroopers clap them on. Apparently, this is the first Juggernaut that's made it to the Remnant base in ages. So the cognitive dissonance of seeing Imperials save the day and then let loose like rebels after Yavin or Endor, albeit with the odd "Glory to the Empire" shouted from the crowd, drives home Mayfield's moral relativist stance. If you're born on Mandalore, you believe one thing. If you're born on Alderaan, you believe something else. But Mayfield doesn't maintain his detached self-interest realist/survivor persona for long. Mayfield finds the terminal he needs in the officer's mess, the Morak equivalent of Eddie Izzard's Death Star canteen. But before he can access it, he's spooked by the sight of a former commanding officer, Valen Hess, played by former Night King Richard Brake. He wants to bail, but Mando won't aboard. However, he can't clear the terminal's facial scan while wearing his mask, so he does the unthinkable. He embraces full frontal facial nudity. This is the emotional moment the Mandalorian is building up to, and it's sad that Grogu isn't there for the adult Din's first time. It's one thing to forget the face of your father, and another to never know it. If you had Miggs Mayfield, of all people, and the first person to see Mando's face, pool, congrats. You lead a charmed life. That beautiful Pedro Pascal. Sexy man. I'm glad that he's playing Din Djarin. So after Mando passes up a perfect opportunity to unmask himself earlier in the episode, it would have been a letdown if he hadn't done the deed this week. Some combination of devotion to his tiny captive clanmate and Bo-Katan's truth bomb in Chapter 11 convinced him to abandon a lifelong belief and put his friend and fellow foundling before the way. As Mayfield says, everybody's got their lines, they don't cross until things get messy. Mando, who understandably looks like he's forgotten how to use his face, does put a bucket back on his head when his business at the base is done. But by then, Mayfield has seen everything. Let's see here. Still, he's not. So they sit down with the bad guy Imperial officer. Mayfield, he's still not surrendering his habits easily, although he's even replaced his helmet with a concession of sorts. So much for Mando's comment to Kara last season that after taking off someone's helmet in polite company, you can never put it back on again. So let me pause here to offer some free feedback for the Imperial Remnant's network security crew. This attack was a test of the Empire's preparedness for cyber warfare, and the defenses failed so spectacularly that the entire IT department should stop filing out TPS reports and start chomping on the suicide pills Gideon gives his officers. For one thing, it's way past time to change the passwords. Mayfield mustered out less than 5 years ago, but probably not a lot less. That's certainly long enough that his clearances and protocols should be far from current. Second update, your personal files. I've been locked out of work account. I've been locked out of a work account for a day I left a job, and my work wasn't as sensitive as Mayfield's. Are you telling me he has the indefinite access to the database because he served as a sniper a long time ago? He doesn't even bother to put on his helmet when he enters the base. Side note, maybe make helmets with a little bit better visibility. And there's the face scanner, a piece of sophisticated tech that doesn't do anything except make sure you remember that you take your helmet off and confirm that you have a face. Why does Din pass the scan? I get that the Empire isn't at its height here, but if this week was an emblematic of the Remnant's security standards, getting Grogu back should be easy. Hess, the rare Imperial officer who lacks a clipped Coruscanti accent, is initially suspicious of Mando's inability to answer basic questions, but Mayfield manages to allay his concerns so thoroughly that Hess offers them a drink to celebrate their Rhydonium delivery. Hess reveals himself to be a true believer along the line of Werner Herzog's client and Titus Welliver's captain. The New Republic is a complete disarray, and we grow stronger, he brags, recalling the client's last words in Chapter 7, also delivered over drinks. He asserts that order, not freedom, is what the galaxy craves, and insists that the masses will welcome the Empire's second ascendance. Judging by the sequel trilogy, he's not necessarily wrong. He says, so Hess says, he states that the New Republic is in complete disarray and we grow stronger. He asserts that order, not freedom, is what the galaxy craves. Order. So you guys got to remember that this takes, I don't know, what is it, like 7 or 9 years before the First Order comes up. So keep in mind, this is still the Empire. But he says that he asserts that order, not freedom, order. So maybe they're talking about, maybe this is like a slight hint to the order. I don't know. Like when I watched reading this and when I watched New Rockstars, they didn't even touch upon, like, he asserts that order. So maybe that's what they're talking about. Order, not freedom. So maybe this is Kylo Ren's upbringing to the First Order. So Mayfield isn't drinking the Kool-Aid or the free round. He proposes a toast to the Operation Cinder and goads Hess by bringing up the atrocity the officer oversaw in Burnin Khan, in which an entire city was sacrificed, supposedly for the greater good. Hess, who shares a surname with a well-known Nazi convicted of crimes against peace, doubles down on his callousness, promising to use the Rhydonium to create a havoc that's going to make Burnin Khan just pale by comparison. Unable to keep his cool, Mayfield blasts the unrepentant Hess touching off a firefight in frantic escape, aided by Fett's flying and Fennec and Kara's sniper support. It's kind of incredible how quickly I've adjusted to Boba being alive and just sort of tagging along as assistant to the regional Mandalorian. Whoever wrote The Ringer, whoever wrote this, I completely agree. I mean, I was stoked to see Boba Fett, but it's amazing how quick I've come to the realization of being, yeah, he's back. Badass. So, The Believer is an action-packed chapter filled with fireballs, fisticuffs, and chases, but the tense, understated scene in the officer's mess is the episode's most memorable confrontation. That's a testament to the writing of Rick Famuyiwa and the acting of Bill Burr. Famuyiwa joins Dave Filoni as the only director to be behind the camera for 3 episodes, and he's the only non-Favreau Filoni writer to receive sole credit for a script. Famuyiwa co-wrote the teleplay for Chapter 6, Burr's debut, and his one main effort in Chapter 15 is well stocked with subtle, perceptive dialogue that develops characters and ranges in the tone from funny to chilling. I wasn't especially sorry when Burr said in June that he wouldn't be back for the second season, but in his reprise appearance, he brings more emotional depth to Mayfield while also nailing lines like, for a second I thought you were this other guy, to Fett, or what would you say on Mandalore after eyeing Mando's Imperial armor? The conversation in the mess reframes Mayfield's motivations. Maybe the prospect of sticking it to the Empire, which he ended up doing by blowing up the base, was why he really agreed to go to Morak, and why he didn't turn on Mando at the base when he easily could have done so. And maybe all that blather about bad people on both sides was a way of rationalizing his Imperial past. When he's riding in the Juggernaut, Mayfield says, "As far as I'm concerned, if you make it through your day and still sleep at night, you're doing better than most." He seems like a sound sleeper, unbothered by his past, but his haunted face in the mess exposes the pain lurking below the laid-back facade. "We all need to sleep at night," he explains after offing Hess. When Mayfield insists, "We're all the same," Mando retorts that he and the mercenary are nothing alike. But unlike Lang from Chapter 13 or The Last Jedi's DJ, they both have the consciences and care about others more than they initially let on. Thanks to this model behavior as anti-Empire operative, Mayfield gets to go free after all. Kara commutes his half-century sentence and looks the other way as he wanders off, not quite incensed enough about the Empire to team up long-term, but The Believer, an appellation that could describe most every character this week, however twisted and evil, ends with a Mando mic drop. Like Rambo raiding Murdoch, telling him he's coming, Mando sends a holo to Gideon to put him on notice, and he does it in the most badass fashion imaginable, by reciting Gideon's Chapter 7 speech on Navarro right back to him, almost word for word. Gideon isn't amused. Gideon knows much more about Grogu than Din did last season, but he doesn't know Grogu nearly as well. The difference in their relationship to the child is reflected in their words. Where Gideon says, "In a few moments, it will be mine," Mando says, "Soon, he will be back with me." And where Gideon says, "It means more to me than you will ever know," Mando says, "He means more to me than you will ever know." To Gideon, Grogu is a means to an end, a factory for midichlorians. To Din, he's family. Mando's main man was missed this week, but the bond between the baby and his adaptive dad was always evident to Din's actions, and Grogu's unprecedented absence only amplified the anticipation for the finale. The iconic battle between Mando and Gideon that Giancarlo Esposito foreshadowed in September could be coming as soon as next week. Din wants his baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back, baby back, and he's about to start seeking his Taken/ransom style revenge. And when he won't vanquish Gideon in Chapter 16, in November, Esposito said, "I have a feeling you'll see more of me next season." He may rescue Grogu with the help of the Magnificent Seven-ish group of Fennec, Fett, Cara, and other allies. Karga, Bo-Katan, Ahsoka, Cobb Vanth, or maybe the second season, like the second Star Wars movie, will end with the clan still splintered, setting up for an excruciating wait for the third act. So some cool things to look for. And this week, so let's talk about the title. Believer. So this could go for many other people. It could go for Hess, the Imperial officer. He scarily still believes in the Empire and that they will rise to ensure order and not freedom. One, he's a believer. Mayfield believes that people are still good. Din starts to believe in Bo-Katan. That's why he took his helmet off. So those are some 3 ideas on who the believer is. So this week gave us glimpses of shore troopers from Rogue One, AA gunners supporting the elongated helmets of Death Star troopers, more OICT-style cranes made out of scavenged AT-ATs, and juggernauts that resembled the variants used by the Old Republic, the Rebel Alliance, and the Empire in previous Star Wars movies and animated series. Their Carthon chop fields setting smacked of Bracca from Jedi Fallen Order, but seemed more inspired by concept art from The Force Awakens, a film that featured ample Imperial scrap on Jakku. Rhydonium is a dangerous starship fuel featured in the Clone Wars and Rebels and described by munitions specialist Sabine Wren as one of my oldest and most explosive friends. Although Fett's EE-3 original trilogy rifle returned in The Believer, the Cycler rifle from Tatooine fired the fateful shot that took out the Empire's base. Mayfield covers for Mando by explaining that his vessel lost pressure in Tanab. That's the planet Lando referenced in Return of the Jedi. Although the Battle of Tanab that he credited for his hasty promotion to general didn't involve the Empire. An earlier engagement between the Empire and the Rebels took place on Tanab after the Battle of Yavin, which might be the skirmish Mayfield meant. Oddly, Poe Dameron makes a cameo in Chapter 15's episode-ending concept art. But the best callback of all wasn't verbal or visual, but auditory. As Slave One lifted off of Morak, Boba took a cue from Jango's tactics against Obi-Wan over Geonosis in Attack of the Clones, and dropped a seismic charge, which beautifully bisected the 2 TIE fighters in pursuit. To paraphrase, Fett the Elder, he won't be seeing them again. That silent explosion, followed by a wow, remains one of Star Wars sound god Ben Burtt's finest work. So, this episode was sick. This episode was awesome. So, in true typical fashion, let me pull out my journal and write down what points does this episode make? The Believer. Main plot points. I'm giving this a 10. Mando shows his face because, he obviously loves Grogu. And I think he's the true believer. He believes in Bo-Katan, and I think he's starting to believe in the Force. Episode points, I'm giving that a 10 as well. Mayfield, he gets let off, and I think he's gonna make a comeback. I think we're gonna see him some more. Not like a lot more, but I think he might show up in maybe season 3. Obviously not next episode, but. And action points, giving that a 10 as well. Big explosion, good stunt choreography, just overall really good. So that makes that 30 points, and that is tied with the episode The Jedi in my standing. It's no official standing for any episodes. This is my opinion, and my opinion only. Sorry for the short episode again, but I have a really long final in an hour and a half. I'm going to try and upload this and get it out by 5. If it's out by 6, I apologize. And maybe I'm lamenting over the grade that I got for this final. But thank you guys so much for listening again this week. And maybe next week we'll see new characters. I mean, I doubt we'll see any new characters. Maybe some end scene after credit scenes leading into what season 3 will hold in December of next year. But this is really exciting. Next week I will be recording in my hometown, and that will be continued for another few weeks, 4 weeks maybe. I'm probably going to spend all of my winter break at home. So thank you guys so much again for listening this week. I'll see you guys next week. Bye.